Did you kill your wife, Mindy Kassotis?
I absolutely did not. I've never put my hands on a woman. I've never hurt a woman. I would never have hurt Mindy.
Did you strike her on the head up to 9 times?
Never. Never, not once.
You don't want to miss this episode coming up on Killer Genes.
Dispose of her body?
No, never.
Did you dismember her body?
No, absolutely not. Frankly, I'm not great with blood, so as anyone who's ever given me a doctor's exam can tell you, that is not something that is even remotely possible for me.
This case has revealed a level of depravity that truly shocks the conscience.
The murder trial built on a phantom FBI agent. In all of my years covering crime, I have never seen a murder trial unfold quite like this one. I've reported on cases involving intricate cover-ups, complex alibis, and defendants with a flair for the dramatic, but nothing compares to watching a former Navy JAG officer, a man who once prosecuted cases for the military, stand accused of murdering and dismembering his wife, and then try to clear his name using a defense built entirely around a fictional FBI agent. Yes, you heard that right. This wasn't just a passing reference or a casual claim. This supposed FBI agent was central to his story, woven into every thread of his explanation for how his wife vanished and why he had nothing to do with it. His attorney put this phantom character in front of the jury, and in a move you rarely seen in cases of this magnitude, the defendant, Nicholas Kassotis, took the stand himself.
Do you know why Jim McIntyre would help you find a job?
Yeah, I believed that he was helping me because of our situation, that he knew people, which is not uncommon, private sector and the government on criminal, especially cyber investigations, often have to work very hand in hand. And as I had talked to him, and I was hoping to find something that would allow me to work from home, because despite his reassurances that he did not think at that time we were in real danger, I was very uncomfortable leaving Mindy home alone.
And that's when the trial crossed over from tragic to just downright surreal. Now, watching Kassotis testify was like watching a screenplay come to life. One of his own screenplays, in fact. He is, by his own account, a published author of horror stories, even claiming to have sold one of his stories to Sony Pictures. No, I couldn't find anything on the internet anywhere verifying that. But as he told his story, it was hard to tell whether he truly believed this narrative or whether he simply thought he could sell it to a jury like he might pitch a movie plot.
The night that we arrived there, or possibly the next day, I was assaulted at the house that he had set up as a long-term rental. At that time, he had told me that I was being targeted by members of my family, most specifically my father, Wayne Kassotis.
Did you believe that?
I did believe that.
Why would you believe that your own father would travel to Charlottesville and assault you?
At that time, we had been looking at literally everyone in our lives. My ex-wife, Mindy's ex-boyfriend, a former boss of Mindy's best friend who had tried to assault her at one point. Anyone who might have ill will held against us.
In watching this unfold in court, I noticed the cracks right away, the details that made you roll your eyes, the leaps in logic that no reasonable person could make, the way the story grew more convoluted by every second, every time he opened his mouth. So thank you for joining me on this episode of Killer Genes. If you are new here, I'm Melissa. Welcome. They want justice. They want answers.
What stands out to you about his personality?
What's the family want most of all? Closure. But you were just the last person to see her.
Get out
There's
of my
an arrest
yard
warrant.
and leave.
You have a lot of weighty accusations. Her name is Mindy Kassotis. Before her dismembered remains were found in the woods of rural Georgia, before her husband was arrested for her murder and dismemberment, Mindy's life had already been consumed by a shadowy figure by the name of Jim McIntyre. According to Nicholas, her husband, Jim was an FBI agent assigned to protect them. Now, Jim, Nicholas testified in court, controlled nearly every aspect of their lives. He dictated when and where they would move and how often they would move, sometimes with just an hour's notice, days' notice, and sometimes as many as 20 moves in 6 months. They lived out of a plastic bin, little totes, constantly uprooted. Jim had access to their bank accounts, their mail, their passwords, their signal messaging accounts, and Nicholas said Jim even controlled their housing, their money, their health insurance, and of course their safety and their safety plan. Here's the problem. Prosecutors say Jim McIntyre never existed. He wasn't an FBI agent at all. He wasn't even real. And they argue that this entire elaborate story was nothing more than a smokescreen, an elaborate fiction designed to cover up a horrendous murder. Nicholas told the court that this Jim figure first appeared in their lives after a series of some strange incidents, some petty vandalism at their homes, nails in the tires, bank account issues. Jim, Nicholas said in court, showed credentials and claimed to be with the FBI. Now, he, quote, embedded himself in their lives, and Nicholas testified, arranging moves, securing the rentals, investigating supposed threats, trying to figure out if there was a threat in the couple's lives, if so, where it was coming from. And he said that everyone, according to Nicholas, was a suspect, their neighbors, their relatives, even his first wife, Heather. Now, Jim, this Jim McIntyre character, Nicholas said even gave him a job with an AI software development company when he was unemployed. But here's the catch. He wasn't paid in cash. He wasn't paid weekly, not even monthly. Instead, he was compensated in stock options. Nicholas said he set up a trust to safeguard the money. And Jim had, of course, full access to that trust, just as he had access to everything else. In court, it played almost like a con man thriller, but the legal problem for the defense was it was glaring because no one could actually verify that Jim McIntyre existed, his identity, not one piece of paper, no work history, no FBI records, no payroll stubs, no wire transfers. When asked for documentation, Nicholas simply said Jim handled all of it. Not even video, a photo of this guy.
At the time, I believed Jim McIntyre was paying for the rental.
At the time you believed it.
Yes.
Why would you believe Jim McIntyre, this FBI agent, is paying for the rental of your homes?
I assumed that he was paying for it out of our own money, but because he had access to this trust, I didn't think this was coming out of FBI funds or anything.
Why did he have access to your money?
Because he was keeping it safe for us, was our understanding.
So a possible motive with this mounting financial pressure against Nicholas Kassotis, well, he owed his ex-wife Heather $1.5 million in a divorce settlement. A judge had actually threatened him with contempt if he didn't pay his ex-wife. So when Heather, the ex-wife, testified in court on this murder trial, I expected her honestly to just spill every dark detail that Nicholas was controlling, he was paranoid, maybe even a little bit unhinged. But she didn't. Instead, she described their years together as good, normal. She said they were best friends and he was a nice guy and that they never fought. So she also added Nicholas really wanted children, but Heather had PCOS and said she couldn't conceive, but she eventually had this miracle pregnancy during the marriage. She ended up losing the baby in a miscarriage. And that loss, she said in court, changed the relationship. They felt more like roommates rather than spouses over time, so they ended up filing for irreconcilable differences. In the settlement, Nicholas was ordered by the judge to pay off a home loan, refinance it, the car, and pay Heather her share, right? Dividing assets. But he never did. It's not exactly clear when he started to unravel, when the delusions began, but prosecutors suggested that it may have been the mounting pressure from the divorce settlement between Nicholas and Heather. So when the court was ready to hold him in contempt for non-payment, Nicholas claimed that he suddenly had $32 million, but of course he couldn't access it. He said Jim McIntyre was managing his money and would handle the payment to Heather. But conveniently, Jim just never paid. Plus, he went on to say that his current wife, Mindy, was somehow tied to the $32 million, which complicated getting access to it. So this is a former prosecutor for the military under oath sharing in a court of law continued fables to the judge of this, again, fictitious $32 million. And with nowhere else to go, money running out, even though there was this said $32 million, Mindy and Nicholas, they moved out of state and away. Kassotis hadn't spoken or seen his family in years. His poor parents, they never understood why he just vanished from their lives, stopped communicating with them. And if you believe Kassotis, he says that no one could be trusted, that he had to suspect everyone was after him for unknown reasons at this point, even his own parents. And really, to what gain? What did he even have of value? What value did he even have for people, let alone his own family, to be after him? But despite going cold and disappearing on his family members, his parents, they still defended him in a court of law, saying that he was kind and sweet and a caring man who would never be capable of ever being violent or harming anyone. They spoke with tears in their eyes that were just weakened from emotional distress. Back to the months and weeks prior, before Mindy Kassotis was murdered and dismembered, in June of 2022, Mindy's family had had enough of the couple living with them. It was already a crowded house. So they told the couple that they just simply had to leave, setting a move-out date. Now, that date would come and go, and the couple wouldn't show any signs of packing or leaving. So eventually, the family had to evict their own daughter and her husband. Evicted by her mom and dad because her husband couldn't get out of the cloud of lies, the debts, and the fables he was telling himself and everyone. So Nicholas said around that time, Mindy's parents had kicked them out of their home because they had zero money or access to his own money because Jim McIntyre, who controlled all of it, remember this fictitious FBI agent, he said all of a sudden he had sold a horror story that he wrote to Sony Pictures for $300,000. But again, Jim controlled the money, not him. For prosecutors, this was the pressure cooker, right? Financial ruin, strained family ties, and a so-called FBI agent controlling the purse strings. For the defense, it was the perfect setup for someone else, maybe even Jim, to have committed this murder. But here's the problem. If a man truly controlled all aspects of your life, there would be a paper trail, bank transfers, signatures, security footage at ATMs, something, somewhere. It would exist. The state demanded proof of this Jim McIntyre, and Nicholas, he provided none, nothing. So it comes to the body in the woods, his wife Mindy. On December 2nd of 2022, hunters found dismembered human remains on Hunting Club property in Liberty County, Georgia. Months later, DNA and genetic genealogy confirmed that the remains were Mindy's. Now, her family helped provide DNA samples to make that match. I can only imagine what they were going through during that DNA process. Now, her autopsy showed 9 injuries to her skull. She had defensive wounds. Her death was ruled a homicide. Not only that, she was dismembered, her head severed, her torso, her arms just severed in pieces. The state argued it was premeditated. They presented receipts showing Nicholas had purchased gloves, a shovel, Clorox wipes, a knife, and even a deer processing kit. Phone records placed him at the remote location where she was found for 2 hours, the exact place where her remains were found. Prosecutors said he transported her body there and severed her limbs in under 2 hours, and forensics said her head had been removed, her arms, her torso, all separated, a absolute complete diabolical disgrace of what this man did to his wife and her body. The murder weapon, it was never found. Here is the defense. Nicholas's attorney argued there was no DNA evidence linking him to the killings or the dismemberment, no abnormal blood traces in their home. Some tiny blood amounts were found on a favorite futon of Mindy's, but not enough, and apparently it was never tested to see if it actually was her blood, and it simply just wasn't enough. They pointed out that the purchases of this shovel, the knife, and the deer hunting kit, they were made months prior to the crime taking place. Nicholas himself testified that he could, quote, never kill or dismember anybody, claiming that he was squeamish around blood. And if you saw just that part of his testimony, right, if you were just scrolling through and saw that random clip, you might have believed him. But then it came the rest of his story when he did the rare move to even testify. The backstory, which was just simply absurd. The wildest part of all of this, Nicholas claimed Mindy was actually pregnant at the time of her murder and had suddenly become ill in late 2022. He said Jim, not him, Jim took her to a birthing center and then to a hospital for a checkup. Hours later, Nicholas claimed Jim told him Mindy had died from complications of a miscarriage. Nicholas never saw her body, never spoke to a doctor, never received a death certificate for his wife's sudden passing. Instead, he signed paperwork for her cremation and went home to drink. He also claimed to have been receiving messages from Mindy via Signal before her supposed death, yet he never called her directly. This is your wife, the love of your life.
This is all very passive voice. You didn't take her to the hospital?
I did not. Mr. McIntyre took her to the hospital. This was a concern of ours throughout, that when she was seeking medical treatment, because of our insurance, because of our last names, that this was going to pop up somewhere that could potentially be used to identify us.
When did, well, you already said that. When did you next see Mindy?
I never saw Mindy again.
Why not?
I got messages Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday that I thought were from her. Everything seemed positive. And Thursday said I received a phone call and was told she'll be ready to pick up this afternoon. I'd sent her a few messages that hadn't heard back. I assumed she was either napping or undergoing some sort of test that she didn't have her phone with her.
Who told you that she had died?
A man at a medical clinic of some sort that I went to.
Where was the medical clinic you went to?
Somewhere in Savannah or the greater Savannah area. I don't know Savannah very well, so.
What was the name of the man that told you that?
I do not recall.
He said he never saw her again after she left to the hospital with Jim. And when he was told that she suddenly died as a healthy 40-year-old woman, that he just got drunk. It was the kind of story that, as a reporter, you write down word for word because you can't believe someone just said it under oath. Nonetheless, a former prosecutor. The prosecution, they didn't buy one single bit of it. And why should they? It was absolutely absurd. Now, through the jury's lens, right? The state's theory, it was pretty simple. Nicholas was drowning in debt, facing contempt of court, and had an escape plan. He had access to Mindy alone at all times. He was isolating her. He had the means, the tools, and the secluded location. He had the opportunity and the phone records placing him where she was found for 2 hours. The defense's theory was equally simple, some would say. No weapon, no direct DNA, purchases made long before the killings, and a mysterious outside threat, this phantom Jim McIntyre messing with their lives. But the problem for the defense was that Jim, the keystone of their story, he just simply did not exist. Let's get to the verdict of this absolutely bizarre story. The jury deliberated quickly after the 2-week murder trial. The foreman later said they were unanimous. Nicholas never produced a shred of evidence that Jim McIntyre was real. They found him guilty on all 12 counts. At sentencing, the judge looked at him and said some pretty powerful words. Listen to this.
To put together this elaborate scheme, this web of lies, creating this fictional character Jim McIntyre, who does not exist. You wrote fiction, and your life was a fiction, at least the last 6 or 7 years. And then you carried out, or the evidence shows that you carried out a brutal, horrific, gruesome murder of Mindy, someone who's been described by various witnesses as beautiful, kind, loving, vibrant, smart. And all of her hopes and dreams vanished in an instant. Her life tragically cut short by you. Someone who professed to love her, to care for her. Just the ultimate betrayal. And then you desecrated her body in such a vile way, discarding her remains out in a rural area of Liberty County, hoping that they would never be discovered. This shows beyond all doubt that you have no conscience. You have caused so much harm to your own family, to all of those who have been impacted by your deeds. This is truly a heinous crime. So the court has considered all the facts and circumstances of the case, and the court will now impose sentence that reflects the gruesome nature of your criminal conduct. As to count 1, malice murder, the court hereby imposes a sentence of life without the possibility of parole.
And with that, a man who once served his country walked out of court in shackles, never to be freed again, receiving life without the possibility of parole. Now, in the end, this case will be remembered not only for one of the most brutal crime scenes, but for the defense's reliance on a phantom of fictional FBI agent who existed only in the mind of a man who killed his wife, a former prosecutor, a one-time horror story writer who wrote up murder and cover-ups, now having to sit and rot in jail with his own thoughts all the time, left to continue this fictional tale that plays out in his mind in prison. And behind all the courtroom drama, all the bizarre storytelling, there is still the loss of Mindy, a woman her friends and family described as kind, intelligent, and deeply loved, a woman family said was just so sweet and joyful to her friends and family. She was also into political science as a younger student, and that was her passion in academics, which she thrived in. She was passionate about it. She was vibrant and warm, and she had gone on to book her dream job, and that's when she lost touch with many of her friends and colleagues, but they recall how her ability to make everyone laugh and was just always so happy and joyful. Now, this will go down as one of the most bizarre murder trials I've ever seen play out. I mean, this convicted killer was one time a credible person in society, and he chose to create this fake character and stick with it until the very end instead of taking responsibility. Now, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. Get this, on our next episode coming up on Killer Genes, you don't want to miss this one, a profound interview with a woman who spends her career in her life trying to rescue children and others from sex trafficking and organ trafficking. I know it's hard to believe, but it does exist. It's a real thing. She's got receipts to prove it. She's embedded, and she joins me on the next episode. It is captivating, it is disturbing, and it is a must watch, must listen. We'll see you then.